feed the world more efficiently.
Since 2031, I've known the human genome sequence for every single one of my patients. So now, I custom fit treatments for maximum effect.
The gears in these babies are more complex than ever, but we keep them going. We have to. 5 million Iowa homes depend on it.
Safer waterways for our kids to swim in.
Job security.
A healthier population.
Feeding the world.
We don't know yet how you're going to do it, but we can't wait to see what you do, because greatness stems from Iowans. Why is...
Whoopsie. That's it. Thank you, Courtney. And once again, there's our website. And if I get time toward the end of our panel today, I may show you a couple of the career vignettes. But for now, let's get to the heart of the matter. We have three outstanding panelists. I'm Jeff Wells. A brief background on the panel and I'd like to introduce themselves. This panel's genesis in planning the conference was a realization that attendees to today's summit would likely benefit from Courtney, can you push record that in? Push record on the camera. Just to stop the button. Thank you, Terry. I'm stepping to the mic because we've decided that the camera will likely miss all of us if we don't use the microphones. So let's fire that one up. And despite the fact we don't really need them, I'm going to hide behind this podium, and I'll invite you guys to pass the mic around for your future fans. And Terry, by the way, is a member of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council. Thank you very much for serving in that capacity. So we have hopefully something for everybody. We have the IT sector, we have skilled trades, and then we have broad spectrum manufacturing represented today. So my first question for the panelists is this. If you have a better one, again, feel free to substitute yours for mine. My question of each panelist would be this. Would you each provide a bit of background on the supply-demand equation in your business? What sort of employee is toughest to find? And then parenthetically, not only in terms of the job description, but traits and dispositions needed. And that's the one I'm going with because I'm not seeing any hands. Let's start on the far end with Terry this time. You want me to repeat the question? Okay. Oh, I have yours too? I thought I saw one on the bench. There it is, okay.
Okay. In terms of skills that we need and what we're looking for, you know, I could sit up here and talk about specific job titles. We're always looking for engineers. We often have to look for welders. But then, you know, it's all over the place. We can also be looking for maintenance people. And those job titles and the need for those positions can change a little bit from year to year. It's usually it's oftentimes the STEM roles that we really need to fill. But it's also the skills that we focus on more frequently so that we can better understand what the skills are that we need to address as opposed to just the job titles. So in all of the positions that we're needing to fill, we're always looking for creative thinkers, problem solvers, those soft skills that you hear about all the time, the communication skills. Those are the things that we're connecting with the elementary schools and the high schools with early on, because those are things that they can work on from the very beginning. And we connect with students at the 4th grade level, but we're trying to do that earlier and earlier all the time because we know that those kids are developing their skills already by age 12. So it's the soft skills that we really focus on, but then it's the job titles that I just mentioned that stay fairly consistent, but that they can go from one place to another from year to year.
Can I pause and drill into this on behalf of everybody? I hope you're all agreeable to this. I want to probe a little deeper, Terry. So welders, engineers, that's the positions hard to fill. And then the dispositions that are hard to fill are the soft skill developed candidates. And so if you wouldn't mind, when you say soft skills, a lot of thoughts go through my head, probably yours too. There's a lot of things we're all defining as soft skills. Would you mind identifying some of the more elusive of the soft skills in candidates that you interview?
Sure. I mentioned this very briefly, but it's those problem-solving skills that we're often looking for. So often, because of different requirements and so forth that the students face every day at school, they're given an equation or a specific problem that there's a direct line to a conclusion, and that's certainly needed in a lot of areas. But when it comes to advanced manufacturing, a lot of times there is no right or wrong answer. It's really being able to explore the options and doing that in a number of different ways and doing it within a team and being able to communicate well within that team to get to the best solution, even though there might be several options available. So it's the problem solving, the communication, the teamwork. Those are some of the critical ones. But then we're also actually, when we bring kids into Vermeer to explore the opportunities that we have through internships and job shadowing and so forth, we almost always also talk about things like writing your resume well, interviewing well, and we have practice sessions with the students that come to Vermeer, and I might have an opportunity pretty soon to talk about some of those programs more specifically. But those are the things that terrify a lot of kids. They know that will be in their future at some point, but they don't necessarily learn how to write a resume or interview in a high school class, certainly not in an elementary school class. But even as they go through college, they never necessarily have training in those communication skills. So that's a big one, Jeff.
Thank you. Randy?
when it comes to the soft skills, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, obviously you think of punctuality and you think of showing up for work every day, but we're also focused on, like what you said about what are their, what other abilities. I know in our company, being a job shop, it's in our DNA to try to do jobs that are very difficult to do, and so we're looking for people that want to be, that can think through things. You know, I ask questions in the interview about, can you give me an example where you helped a company save money by, you know, using less time or less material, to try to get them to think in those terms, such as that. And then also, I spend a lot of time up front in the interviewing process. We have been through the process in years ago where, like a lot of companies, you go hire, you know, 10 people and hopefully, you know, 2 would stick with your company, and that's very, very expensive, I think, as a lot of us have learned. So I spend a lot of time with them up front. You know, we do some assessments. We do personality assessments just to get a sense of their work ethic and their honesty and their things like that. We do math assessments. We do even assessment to find out what their listening skills are, if they can follow directions or not. Because if I have a person that seems fairly intelligent, can listen, we can turn them into a lot of things that they don't, you know, provide a lot of skills that they don't have. We've got a very skilled and very experienced workforce, but if you have to have somebody there that's going to come up, and so we struggle with that. I mean, I've noticed here in the last couple of years, just sometimes we'll have a new employee come in there, you know, early 20s, and they'll do the work for a year or so, then they'll kind of get bored with it and kind of move on. So again, that's kind of the next step in trying to figure out how do we get them here to stay longer and be energized and really, you know, be enthused with it. You know, we're in a small community, a small town, a small company, and so you have to find the right people that want to be that. When we go to an Iowa State career fair or something like that, you'll see, you know, everybody lined up at John Deere or Rockwell Collins or something like that. But you know, they're hiring, you know, dozens and hundreds of interns. I'm hiring 1 or 2 a year, and so that makes a big difference. And so, but for us, the cool part is, you know, 1 or 2 good ones can really make a big impact for a small company like that. And so, I try to get that best match as I can. So, hopefully that answers.
Sure, Marcy.
Okay. I think when you think about this question, I think about, you know, the folks that you hang out with every day, your peers or students. It's the same list. It's the reliability factor. It's the dependability factor. It's those staples in life that you think, for us, it's like, okay, yeah, you know, basics. I think for our organization, the size and the amount of hiring we do, you know, we see too much deficit on those basics. Like, I have to be here on time. I've made a commitment. I have to see this through. Accountability, professionalism, confidence. You know, these are all pieces that we see across the many skills from a technical perspective that we need. And when I say tech, you know, we're talking anything from an in-depth IT program to that of customer service and an insurance forum. So in Des Moines specifically, you know, we do a lot of servicing. So essentially, we have a lot of insurance companies that we provide servicing for. So we do a lot of call center hiring, and we do a lot of data processing hiring. It's still the basic pieces, though. It's that of knowing how to treat others like you want to be treated. It's that of critical thinking, as was mentioned, and the staples, just from, as I mentioned, from an accountability perspective and otherwise.
Thank you. So this is where it gets interesting. It actually says that on my question. This is where it gets interesting. And each of these folks was picked because, personally, I was intrigued by them, right? The IT sector, and that sucking sound we all hear is the IT sector is sucking up talent as fast as they can find it. A small town, Sheraton, Iowa, metal machining, fabrication. Can't be easy to lure talent to Sheraton, as gorgeous a town as that is. And so I'm intrigued by Randy and his shop and how they attract talent. And then a major global manufacturer in the town of Pella I once lived in, and I know you don't have a dense population pool from which to draw. So the natural question that spurred this session is, how do these 3 organizations, with their employment demands that they face, unique in each case, prime the pump, as in the title of the session? How are they making sure they get the talent they need, given the constraints in which they each operate? So that's more or less the question coming at you, unless you have a better one. The question is this: tell us about the proactive approach you and your company take to balance that supply-demand equation in your favor. Marcy, would you like to go ahead and kick it off?
Absolutely. Cognizant needs some work here. We are an organization that, has been fast growing, as I mentioned, too, globally. And we have some work. We are a lot more reactive, frankly, than we are proactive. However, we are, currently changing the events. We have partnered recently this year with DMAC and offering a pre-training program. And essentially, there's, as some of you are probably very familiar with, there's funding through different courses of states here in Iowa and the like. So really take an opportunity of this funding. We've offered a skill-based program to position individuals to move into Cognizant. It is a free training upskill program. So if you're wanting to change your career, if you're wanting to change the type of job you're doing, if you are underemployed as an employee, this is a good place to start. It provides the basics, as I was talking about, and what we need. That of what a corporate organization looks like, that of interviewing skills and practice of those, a customer service format, and career readiness in general. So with DMAC's partnership, we ran an 8-week program, and this was very voluntary, right? It's for anybody that really is willing to take a step in the investment in themselves. So we've offered this as a free program, and essentially, had 50% of our graduating students hired by Cognizant. Overall, though, it's a community-based program, because even if they're not with Cognizant, it's those essentials that we're offering them from a skill-based perspective to improve their career and their growth as individuals. So we're getting there. Where that's in the Des Moines space, Cognizant actually just announced another pre-training program. This one is very large. It's in the East Coast, New York area, where literally we're positioning to train 650 employees, to be employees, we hope, potential employees from a technical perspective, and looking to hire at least half of those. So that's a very large investment. But you can see when we're talking about proactive measures, it's the right investment. And, leveraging those state-funded programs for upskilling individuals has just been a win-win.
Thank you, Marcy. Randy?
This is the part where I feel funny being up here on the panel, because I don't know if I've figured out a lot of these things yet either. I mean, I'm still figuring out what I'm doing wrong. I think I've found 5 or 6 today. So I'll share with you what we do, though. We try to get out there. We just try to be visible in the community, and so people know about what we do. I mean, we do internships. I go to Iowa State every year, mainly focused on Iowa State recruiting for internships. There's a grant program, internship grant program through IEDA. There's a STEM grant, and then there's a just normal advanced manufacturing and bio processing grant as well, where offers for an internship offers up to $3,100 a year for an intern to come in. So they're replacing some of their wages, so that helps out a little bit. We also try to get into community college. We're try to be pretty close with Indian Hills, who's in our region, and also we've worked with DMAC with some of their welding program too. We just try to get our name out there so people are aware of what we do. So there are people that do want to come to small community, small company, they're aware of us. We try to do job shadows with the high school as well. That's something we're getting better at there. We do a lot of school tours. We try to get as many teachers in, as many students in as we possibly can, and just to tour our facility, because a lot of times people are just amazed. You can go to about any small community in Iowa, and there's going to be some manufacturer there, and you're going to go like, wow, they really do that here in Iowa. And we're just kind of another one of those, just trying to get out there and to share what we do there. Go to a lot of career fairs, high school career fairs, job fairs, again, trying to keep our name out there as much as possible. A couple of them I came up with today, too, that I'm trying to still get my brain wrapped around is the apprenticeship program. How can we help people? You have a lot of people that are underemployed and underskilled, and they're trying to better themselves in the world, but yet they don't have the resources to get to college or get to a community college or whatever. So how can we help them develop their skills in a way that makes them a more productive citizen? And then the externships, again, was another one today, again, working with the teachers. So that's something that we're going to pursue a little bit. So I was fortunate today, came with a couple of our school counselors today here in Sheraton. So we're going to go back and talk and see some of the things we can figure out to, again, start filling that pipeline and try to let people know what opportunities are available.
Wonderful. Hey, Randy, hold on to that mic for one extension of that question. Much as Marcy painted a picture of the hiring practice, I think you mentioned 600 and some being trained, 300 and some of those will be hired, and that's, yeah, I mean, you guys are growing like a weed, cognizant. And by the way, Occupied, I think, I just came to learn, downtown Des Moines, is it the Ruan building? Is that where you guys are now? So it gives you a place.
One of the places.
One of many, probably. So Randy, kind of in that same vein, paint a picture of the hires per year. I think earlier you'd mentioned 1 or 2 hires per year. If and how many apps do you get for those hires, and how much sifting goes on, or is it more like in our case, we get 1 app for the opening, we hope it's a dandy?
Well, back, I got into HR 22 years ago. It's because I thought it looked good on my resume at the company. So I thought for a year or two it looked good, so I'm still doing it. So I don't know what that tells you. But back in those times, I mean, if people applied, if they accept the job, you'd take them. You about take whatever you could get. And so we were struggling for employees. Now, I hire probably 12, 15 people a year. I don't have a lot of turnover. Most of the turnover is probably in the first year or so. It's just sometimes they didn't like the work or wasn't exactly what they wanted. I've gotten a lot better. My record was somebody had started one day and the first break they walked out with their lunch bucket. So I'm got a lot better with that. So I'm doing better in the hiring there. But sometimes you still don't have a fill. But I don't fill a lot of positions. I mean, like I said, 12 or 15 a year. So what was the question again?
I think that's great.
Okay.
So the ratio of apps to
Yeah.
positions.
Oh, ratio to apps. I hire maybe 5% of the apps, if that. I mean, it kind of depends what you have, but it's not a real high percentage, not like it used to be where if they applied, you about hired them. So, I mean, it's pretty low percentage right now.
Thank you.
Randy, I have a question for you as a panelist. I'm kind of curious, though, when you were talking about how you've gotten better, right, when you're hiring, and the approach you took to focus in on the right hires. In your space, given the size, I would think the hires and who you hire is very important. So I would be interested in understanding, what are some of the steps that you have done to focus in on understanding who the right hire is?
I could say most of the right hires, probably one of the best sources is just referrals from current employees. Generally, if you look, I mean, most of the people there have a friend working there. I mean, that's it's pretty common with a lot of companies, and that's probably the highest. I mean, sometimes you'll have somebody move in the community, and for some reason you look at their skills or their experience, and you'll come in. I mean, we've all seen people come in and they don't have very little experience or don't have the skills, and so I don't spend a lot of time on those. And I don't know. That's kind of how I do it, I guess. I guess probably referrals is probably the best source.
Terry, it's the question proactive. How is Vermeer proactive in balancing the supply-demand equation in your favor?
We were visiting about that just a little bit amongst the three of us before we started here, and I mentioned that Vermeer's approach is really a smorgasbord or a buffet approach. We found out that a lot of students respond differently to different things in different ways. So we have a lot of different programs that we have going on, and we find that we are able to reach kids where they're at by doing that. We talk a lot about our funnel approach. So at the top, we start out with pre-K through 12 approach. We are trying to seek out those students in a very general, broad way. And some of the ways we connect with those kids, first of all, we have our Manufacturing Day event. It's an event that we started in 2013, and we do this. We hold this event annually now. And last year we were up to 700 students that we had to Vermeer in one day. Fourth graders and ninth graders are the two grades that we focus on. And we set up about 30 booths that give the kids an opportunity to do a hands-on activity that relates to a career within manufacturing. And they come to Vermeer, they have plant tours, they get to visit those activity stations. And what we want is when they leave Vermeer, we're just hoping that they're excited about what we do, but then also for the first time perhaps realize, okay, well, I enjoy athletics, and so I was really driven by the competitiveness within that sales booth, and so maybe I would be a good salesperson someday. Or somebody who's more interested in numbers. They went to that finance booth and they talked about different currencies from all over the world, and they started thinking, oh, well, there's something I can do with this joy of numbers that I have. Each of those 30 booths has some kind of an activity that we really want to just click with a student. So they say, I like that. Maybe I'll take that somewhere someday. So that's kind of an entrance point type of a program that we start with. But then we have a lot of targeted programs too throughout the course of the year to kind of feed into that funnel. We participate with 2 other area employers, 3M and Pella Corporation, to send groups of engineers into the classroom. It's called our Peers program, so that they can register for that online, and then the teachers can register for that online, and then the Peers program will send out some engineers to their classroom and do an activity with them and talk about what an engineer does, and hopefully those students will be inspired by that. A lot of different programs like that really feed our funnel. We have a Yellow Iron Academy, which is a early learning center on campus. So our team members and also people within the community can send their children to Yellow Iron Academy, which is a STEM endorsed accredited facility where it's some people might call it a daycare, but we are intentional about calling it an early learning center because we're talking about STEM. We have a lab there where they put on their little safety glasses and their little lab coats and they do science experiments while they're there during the course of the day, and it's adorable. So that would be another early program that we participate in. And I have a handout because I could go on, and I don't want to consume this time, but would love to share those with you if you're in. You want to do that now, Jeff? Okay. There won't be enough for everyone, I'm afraid, but if you don't get one today, it's also available at Vermeer.com under About Us, and you'll see Equip for the Future, and this exact same flyer is online there. There's a Pella Career Academy in our community where we're providing mentors to their robotics class so that kids learn more about robotics and then hopefully come to Vermeer one day. There's a weld class there, and we provide the instructor, a prior welder from Vermeer is the instructor for the weld class at the Pella Career Academy. And you'll see other things on here too, internships, both student and teacher interns. We have a lot of college partnerships, both community colleges and universities. And I'll let you read more about it online or in the program. Long story short, we have a buffet approach.
And I have to bring up you first.
When it comes to something like sending our engineers to the classroom through the Peers program, for example, that can change month by month. And the teachers can self-select which activities they want to do. So it may be a Vermeer activity, but it may be a Pella Corporation activity or a 3M activity. So we share that. You'll see here in this flyer that we reach about 1,400 students each semester through that Peers program. Usually that's 20 to 30 kids at a time, so that gives you an idea of how many times those engineers are going out. We have a calendar, so we try and disperse it throughout the year, but each one of these programs that you see here varies depending on our resources, our availability of both time and funding to do that. But we try and be very intentional about spacing it out throughout the entire year.
Yeah, I don't have a registered apprenticeship now.
You're a sponsor?
Our chair of the board was sitting beside me at a table earlier today, and she leaned over and said, "Let's make apprenticeships our next thing." So I think our buffet is getting bigger.
Right. Pay off from today.
And I have questions about the registered apprenticeship. I've been to a program on that, and I'm not sure how that all works, so I'm open to that too. I will say for her case, though, talking about their presence, I know if you go to Indian Hills to the machine tech program, you go in there and you think it's a Vermeer shop because they got Vermeer stickers all over their equipment. So I know that they're in there quite a bit.
There was a session on apprenticeships today. Greer Assistant from the Department of Labor. Hopefully it got recorded, and we'll archive all of these on our website. That will be the next big thing.
Iowa Workforce or Employers Council, they have quite a bit of information on that program. I went to a presentation a year or so ago, and I couldn't get my brain wrapped around it. So I'm still working on that.
So, because he mentioned the community colleges and so forth, one of the ways that we engage with community colleges is we work with them in their different certificate programs, and then we love to get involved throughout the process, but particularly if they have a capstone project where we can really engage those students to conclude that semester, that program of study, so that they get that real world experience within a manufacturer. We invite them in, and we love to have that engagement at that point. And some of those are mentioned in this flyer as well that we do with DMAC and Indian Hills. And the Vermeer International Studies program is also one that we're very engaged with at Iowa State.
Terry, one more probing along these lines. I know personally that you all have a very unique externships model. Randy mentioned externships. There's a lot of variations. Vermeer has a really neat one. I wouldn't mind you describing that in a little bit of detail. And did you mention the amazing K-12 Career Day that you guys host?
The Manufacturing Day?
Manufacturing Day.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I mentioned that just briefly. That was the one where we have about 700 kids in each year, 4th and 6th graders. Yes, we call it teacher internship. It could be called an externship program, but we do have a 3-week program every year for teachers who are looking for a continuing ed opportunity. They use it for continuing ed programs through AEA, or they can get ongoing credit for their master's if that's what they're pursuing through Drake University. But we do have this 3-week program. We invite the teachers in, and they really explore every area of the business during those 3 weeks. It's our goal to let them know what advanced manufacturing is about from start to finish. So they conclude with a Kaizen event or a continuous improvement event, if you're familiar with that. So that's given some teachers, they call us back later and say, "Hey, I used that in my classroom and it went over really well, so thank you for that." So the teacher intern program has been a really popular one as well. It's not huge. We've hosted 67 teachers and guidance counselors since 2006. So that's an annual summer project, and that means per year it's been about 6 to 10 or 12 per year. But we learned that we can touch a lot of kids through one teacher. So that's what's been a huge advantage through our teacher internship program.
Thank you. You inspired ours. If you're a business leader in Iowa and you want to get involved in externships, the STEM Council operates one, and we'll coordinate it for you. Okay, now I'm going to seek a characterization of our audience for the next question. How many of you would consider yourselves in the education sector, K-12 through community college to university, etc.? Half the room, probably. How many of you would consider yourselves private sector business? Thank you. How many are nonprofit, state agency? Fabulous. Have I missed maybe the informal education sector? Well, I think we have what we need. A significant number of folks in the room are in education, and so this question is dedicated to you. It's an advice-seeking question. So each of these three have really taken the bull by the horns. They're orchestrating their own destinies in a way, priming their own pumps, generating the talent in partnership sometimes with education organizations. But as an educator, as an organization, STEM, it's all about getting K-12 systems connected to the world of work that awaits. I would invite each of you to weigh in on some advice for the education sector, K-12, community college, university, et cetera, on what the education system in your midst can do to help alleviate some of the challenges you're up against. And the quote in the question is, what can we do so that you and all of Iowa's employers can depend more on the education system to deliver on your needs? We'd welcome that advice. Marcy, you want to kick it off?
Sure. It's kind of a loaded question. And I will be honest, I'm not so sure that I'm the best qualified individual for it. I say that because I'm very focused, in a corporate environment. And as I mentioned, Cognizant has to get a lot better on how, we're working within our community and within the STEM program and the like. But, advisement, I think it goes back to the first question. And that is, how are we positioning those that will be in careers, whether it be in manufacturing, whether it be in IT, and giving them those basics and not letting them off the hook. And really, building that foundation of accountability, of responsibility, of the basics. And I'm not, I don't know also that that's necessarily on the education shoulders to bear as much as it is on, how the family scenarios are and how folks are raised. So, to me, it still goes back to cementing those basics and how to solve problems, how to treat people. It goes clearly back to those because if you have those elements, that provides an environment of willingness, and as long as that willingness is there, you can do anything from an ability perspective. You can teach anybody anything from an IT skill to that of a customer service skill. Back to the basics.
Thank you. Randy?
It's funny because I rode up with one of our school counselors today, and then we had a discussion just before the session with a couple of people that were here, and I think it's helpful for them to start to understand that what they're doing in school is preparing them for jobs in the future. I think there's kind of a disconnect where I go to school, I graduate, then after I graduate, then I'm going to go do this job and they're going to teach me whatever. I think they have to start seeing that they're getting prepared. And I think that's where a lot of the internships, job shadowing, tours, things like that you can get them exposed to start to understand if we can instill in them that they're preparing for their jobs now, whether it's going to be right after high school or whether they're going to go get a community college or a 4-year degree and then on to a job. This is all a progression for them and to help them to understand that. I spend a lot of time with new employees starting to explain to them, they've come out of, say, an Indian Hills or DMAC and they're a welder. I try to make sure that they understand they're professional now. They're professional like a medical provider. They're professional like an engineer. They're professional like an educator. They have certain standards they have to meet in doing their job. They have to have certain specifications they have to meet. They have to perform their job like any other professional, whether it's a welder or a machinist or whatever. You're a professional now doing this, and help them to understand that this isn't, I'm not in the shop class goofing around and then I'm going to get a job, that you're actually developing a skill and learning something that you can take on to your next job so that we have a basis for training them and bringing them, because they're never going to come in fully trained. I mean, we're going to train them, but if you can help them to understand that they are preparing for coming into the next job, that's going to help us out quite a bit.
Just referring to the question about how can we work together, what can the system help us with. For us, I would say it's really just trying to understand each other. I was in a session or something earlier today where somebody mentioned sometimes it seems like business and education talks 2 different languages, so that's something that we can all work on right off the bat. But then also, I have a sister-in-law who's a teacher, and as soon as I start talking about some of the things that I'm passionate about, she'll remind me there are not enough hours in the day to tell these kids everything we need to tell them and help them understand everything there is to be understood. And so I totally understand that challenge. But when there's opportunity and when that becomes available, what we really need, especially in our advanced manufacturing area, is for kids to know that we're a viable employer, that we have exciting careers no matter what the student interest might be, whether it be that person that will get a doctorate because they're a metallurgical engineer, or if it's that person that just wants to get a certificate and isn't into the academics. We have an exciting career for that child as well. And I'd say that's the biggest thing, is just to help kids understand that there are opportunities in the business world that maybe they've never heard about, and to go out there and do some looking, or help them do some looking, or even talk about it in the classroom. That's one of the exciting things that we hear from our teacher interns, is that they can go back to the classroom and tell kids, hey, I did this and I didn't even know it was a job before I went on a teacher internship. Now I know it's something I can, I could get paid for if I chose to do that, but better yet, you could do that if you wanted to someday. And it's so frequent that kids know that they want to be an engineer or a teacher or a doctor or something. There's these probably 5 big categories. But if they have visibility to what we do in manufacturing or these other industries up here as well, they can get passionate about it. They just don't even know that it's there. So helping students know what's available, and then if there's any way to help them understand the pathway that it would take to get there, whether it be that certificate, whether that be at a community college, whether that be coming to Vermeer and attending one of our Vermeer University training classes, that alone could qualify them for a lot of jobs and roles. So I'd say that's the big thing, is just that we continue to share a common language and talk about what's available to students.
Great theme, day long.
One thing I'll add too is help us understand what your challenges are too, because a lot of times I don't understand what your challenges are. I'll come and I'll say, hey, I want to, we'll do a tour, we'll help you with the job shuttle, we'll help you whatever, and I don't ever hear back from the educators. I think, well, gee, they don't really care, when the reality is, I went over to school one day and they're waiting for the police to get there to take care of some kid, and there's other kids over there that, they don't have a place to stay this weekend, or they don't have money for food. And so, a lot of educators are dealing with a lot of things that we don't understand, and so we'll, if we can understand where you're at, I'll try to be patient. Okay.
And communication.
Right.
Those communities, if you're in one of them, that are blessed to have these collaborative groups where the business sector and the education sector are meeting. There were several sessions on that over the course of the day. That's a great milestone. I have one more question in the bank for these folks, but I'm going to pause in the event that you have one, as we're beginning to wind down our session with maybe 5 minutes remaining. Anybody got a question for him, or do you want me to plow ahead with mine? Why don't you go ahead right here?
This is for Marcy. Yep. So the program that where you're training IT talent, how did you create buy-in for that? So it's a pretty large capital investment to train 600 and hope to get 300 hires out of it. And in addition, who had ownership of implementing that?
Thank you for the question. So depending on where we're at, location-wise, state-wise, it depends. There is different funding available per state. So in the New York area, we were able to secure X amount from a funding perspective, because those investment dollars are going back into the community. We partnered up in the New York area with a nonprofit organization actually called Perscolis. Their specialty is to train individuals in IT-related skills. So in this space, we've helped ourselves and the community, because Cognizant does not necessarily have that heavy lift. Perscolis is going to help us from a recruiting perspective and from an educational perspective, both of which, when you're looking at the new hire process, are very heavy logistically, and they're very expensive. So a lot of times in this particular situation, Perscolis has been our great partner, and again, state funded, depending on what those scenarios are per state. And giving Cognizant's growth, it'll be different in Florida, in Arizona, and the other locations that we're based. Here in Des Moines, we've been able to do a program through the E260 funding and been able to partner up with DMAC, and we're looking to have other partners in helping us through the pre-training process. Okay.
How about you, Rick? Do you want to bank your comment?
Well, I'm saying, can I remove any time at the end?
Yeah.
That I think needs to be addressed.
Okay, table that thought, and let's clear the room of questions first. Anybody else with questions for the panelists? Well, I'll ask one ahead of Rick's wrap-up comment, and it's simply this. You've all been at this for a number of years, and you know the lament we're all familiar with. Had I known then what I know now about the business that you're in, somewhere along the line you navigated a pothole or a hurdle, or you stubbed your toe on this or that thing that could save maybe us from a similar hazard. As you look back on the skill sets you've built and the pathways you've built to populate your operation with talented human beings, what would you share that was a pothole moment that you'd like to save everybody else from? Something you solved that you can share?
Why do I always get the mic first on these intense questions? Yeah, I'm sure it is, Randy. I'm sure it is. So I think I'm thinking back on this, and I look at it actually from my L&D, background, and I think about the new hiring process, and I think of scenarios where we've botched it very badly, whether it be in Cognizant or otherwise. And it goes back to the level of learner and having an appreciation of everybody's at a different rate. I mean, you have a program just like you have a first grade program, just like you have a fifth grade program, and everybody gets the same curriculum. And you try to push it through, and you try to get that new hire onboarded, within your 4-week time period. And you do it all in one track, in one movement, not necessarily having the right respect that from a business model, everybody functions in a different rate, in a different pace. Not much, I don't think, where I stand that I can necessarily control that based on the business needs. I think for me, it's more of, when I'm thinking potholes and it's like pushing, a gigantic elephant through an outlet. It just doesn't fit. So in having the awareness that it doesn't, and knowing when is the right time to stop the madness and step back and regenerate, and not being afraid to do it. So I think, that's what comes to my mind.
Priceless. Thank you. How about you, Randy?
It's a hard question. I think for me, it's, like I said earlier, that we had gone through the process. We hired a lot of people that were debatable, that, we'll give them a shot. And then it's really hard to get rid of people once, at least for us, it's really hard to get rid of them once you hire them. They're kind of like a puppy, you kind of come and, they're not really productive. They're not really doing their job very well, but we're, kind of family-owned business, kind of warm and fuzzy, and so we kind of hate to get rid of people, so they kind of stick around. So I guess my potholes have always been if we didn't follow our process, and if it says that you shouldn't hire them, or it's something, somehow you override your process and go ahead and give somebody an opportunity anyway. That's been some of my worst hires. Once in a while you might have a winner, but for the most part you're gonna put yourself in for a lot of pain. So we've been fortunate. I'm the gatekeeper, since we're a small company. I'm kind of the gatekeeper that everybody goes through, so I kind of get my input into it before we get too far. But we just try to trust that process, and to try to be sure that we get the best fit into the company. If we have a position open and we don't have a good fit for it, we don't fill it with the best available person, because sometimes you're worse off than having having it empty. So I guess that's mine.
Thank you. Terry.
I have a few brief answers to that question. I guess that means we've maybe messed up more than once, but a few things that come to mind. Sometimes we don't look at what's right in front of our faces, or we don't ask the right questions of the right people. So a few of those examples would be, we talk a lot about mentoring, and I am a strong believer in mentoring. We often talked about the need for that, and it was easy for us to say, okay, we just have to engage our workforce in mentoring with some of these young people. Early on, I don't think we saw the retirees sitting right in front of us, ready and willing to do that. And it took us a bit to figure that out, but we have a Friends of Vermeer program, and those are our retirees who want to come back just on a part-time basis or a few hours a week. And they come back and they become mentors for some of the most recent hires at Vermeer, and they've been wonderful mentors. So that would be an example of a group sometimes that's right before our eyes that we don't readily think of or engage, and then when we do, we realize we should have done it much sooner. There are other areas that we get really good at. For example, we have usually 30 to 40 interns every year, and we're good at letting students know about those internships. But this past hiring season, we had between 8 and 900 applicants for those 30 to 40 internships, because we did a good job of getting the word out, but now that means that there's hundreds of wonderful, talented kids that we'd love to see plugged in a lot of different places throughout the state of Iowa. So those are a few things that we're working on and will continue to work on.
Priceless, thank you. I'm going to yield the final 30 seconds to former Simpson College mathematics professor Rick Spellerberg.
So the whole thing about workforce development is a very complicated problem. Sometimes when you try to solve a problem, you actually create other problems or make other components of the problem worse. And one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about with what we have what are called micropolitan areas. So if you're like Sheraton, I'm not sure if it's a micropolitan area, but I think Oskaloosa and Tacoma. And then you have the metropolitans like Des Moines, Iowa City, and Cedar Rapids. The metropolitan areas are growing at an astronomical rate. There's job opportunities there. And where are the people coming from? They're migrating from the micropolitan areas that tend to be very vitally important, small, 10 to 50,000 population cities for the rural area, because they provide grocery stores, they provide, so a company like Sheridan, when those people start, when we have people leaving at an astronomical rate from the bigger cities, all of a sudden it's going to be a lot harder for you to attract people to your business, because all of a sudden the grocery store closes up. So I think one thing that I haven't heard this discussed today, but it's certainly something that I've been thinking about, that I think the state needs to be starting to look at how we, and it may, I mean, I have ideas, I don't know if they're feasible or not, for instance, like the big companies at the point, is it possible where they could set up a satellite operation in a Tacoma or an Oskaloosa, where those good jobs could be there, they're still part of the company. So you can try to reverse that trend, because right now, if that trend continues, 10 to 15, I mean, your job's just going to get harder and harder to attract the employees that you want in your company. You're not going to be able to grow for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're losing population in Sheraton.
Good point.
And a lot of the economic development and chambers and stuff are looking to try to start try to come up with the quote-unquote amenities to start attracting people back to the community. But we're generations away from really starting to turn that around.
Cognizant branch in Leon, Iowa, perhaps?
You never know. We'll set shop up wherever it's honestly where, you can retain individuals, that it's going to be well worth the investment, and you're going to have reliable work staff.
I'm just saying this is something that needs to be, I think,
Yeah.
It's a good point, Rick.
be proactive, I guess.
Yep.
It must be a mathematical algorithm we could develop around. I see a hand there and a hand here, and then we better call it quits. Oh, Richard Longworth.
So we see that happening, that people say go is left.
That's why I brought my economic development director here in the room.
That's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Another dynamic to this component is I feel large employers, which is where I sit, have a responsibility to invest in technology that allows for employees to work from home. You don't have to make a capital investment into a facility if you have a technology investment. So my husband joined the Navy 3.5 years ago, and Principal Financial Group retained me, and I worked wherever we moved. I was able to do my job because of the technology that they had invested in.
You have struck a nerve, my man. That's a panel for next year. Thank you. Before we acknowledge these folks, I just want to acknowledge that the schedule developers knew this was going to be a real pain point in the agenda. Whether we would get everybody back up that escalator at 4:30 for Director Townsend's closing remarks and then a regional optional breakout, prove us wrong. Please come upstairs with us. But for now, help me appreciate this fine panel. Thank you, everybody.